Well, Lewis Hamilton has won the Bahrain Grand Prix, and he dominated from start to finish and never looked back. But it has to be said, that was not the big story from today. This race will forever be remembered for that absolutely monumental shunt that happened on the first lap of the race. Romain Grosjean went into the wall and his car burst into flames. Everyone held their breath, and to be honest, everyone feared the worst. But a massive relief when Romain Grosjean climbed out of what was left of his Haas car. That will no doubt be the big story of the race. Now, before I go into describing the race and the ramifications of what happened, make sure you visit the RaceWeek website, raceweekblog.com. Make sure you follow, like and subscribe to the the RaceWeek YouTube channel, and I would say follow us on Twitter, but I'm struggling to reactivate the account because of issues with the phone that I was connected with, because it's been locked out again, which is ridiculous. But let's go in to the race review. So the race got underway. I'm going to be talking you through a chronological order of what happened in the race, because there'll probably be quite a few posts on talking about the crash later on. So I'll be trying to not fully centre it on the crash and actually talk about the race. Although that's going to be quite hard to do, because to be honest, it was a fairly, after that and then the incident after the safety car, it was a fairly uneventful race. But talking about the start, in the few seconds we had of the first start, Valtteri Bottas got a shocker, lost out to the likes of Verstappen and Perez, and also Albon as well. As you can see in the picture, he was on his way to losing out to Daniel Ricciardo as well. But then the accident happened. Like we saw a lot of jockeying about, but then we saw the Haas flying off, and then followed by a ball of flame. Now, in the initial incident, I personally did not see how big the fire, like how long the fireball lasted. For all I knew, it was just I thought it may have been just one for like a second or so, because they did cut away quite quickly. So at that point I did not know the extent of the full, like the damage of the car or anything. Did not know the extent, but it was obvious it was really, really big, and it could be very, very serious. And the race being red flagged straight away, that just gives a lot of flashbacks to other incidents which have had a very bad outcome. But thankfully it was quite a short time between when the crash happened and when we were all told, miracle of miracles, Romain Grosjean has emerged from the wreckage unscathed. But talking about what actually happened, it seems that there was a lot of jostling about, and Romain Grosjean actually kind of cut across in avoidance and did not see Danny Kvyat on the inside, and then that sent him on that trajectory into the Armco barrier. So the red flag was out, and honestly, I'm still reeling from that impact. Literally, usually after a big crash that the driver emerges unscathed from, I'm usually like, at this point I usually feel actually a bit of satisfaction to see a big crash and the driver emerge unscathed. It's always quite comforting to see the safety tested in some way, but this one is different because it was such, even after knowing the driver was okay, it's just sickening to watch. It's a very, very graphic crash, and I think this is, no matter what happened in the race, this was easily the biggest victory from today. Romain Grosjean emerging from that crash unscathed. As you can see, that's him getting out of the car. He was obviously being made to go to the medical centre. He actually was airlifted to hospital for observation, and I believe that he's going to be remaining there overnight. That has been said. But Roman has since posted on Instagram thanking everyone for the messages. He seems to be in good spirits, and we can breathe a sigh of relief that he was okay. Now, unsurprisingly, after that, the barrier was destroyed. Now, the barrier being uprooted like that should not happen, really. That was the most concerning thing. Part of the reason that I didn't take a bit of... that it wasn't as comforting as it could have been, whilst the monocoque stood up to the crash very well. There were cracks here and there, but the actual monocoque, the roll hoop and the halo were all intact. Pretty much. Were all still in one piece. Which obviously no doubt played a part, particularly the halo. But all the others no doubt played a part in Romain Grosjean getting out. But it was really concerning to see a barrier on one of the safe what's usually seen as one of the safest tracks on the calendar as well. A barrier being uprooted like that. I mean, that should not happen. We've seen other instances in the past where there high-speed impacts with a guardrail like that, where the guardrail has stood up to the impact, but this one did not, and I think that the FIA will probably be having a look into it on not just this track, but on a lot of tracks, and also I'm guessing that for next week's race at the Sakhir Grand Prix, we are going to see a tyre wall there. So that is what's left of. You can see that the scene. This is the barrier repairs. The monocoque was still in there. It's that burnt piece of scrap that you can see in the middle of the screen. But on a closer up picture, you can see that if you look closer up, you can see that it's still the monocoque's still in one piece, but everything else was obliterated. So afterwards, we had a second start to the race. Once again, Hamilton getting away well. Bottas got away well, getting ahead of Albon, battling it out with him and getting ahead. But the safety car was deployed again. Lance Stroll getting tipped into a roll by Danny Kvyat. Danny Kvyat receiving a 10-second time penalty. Poor Lance Stroll recently. He's not really been doing much wrong. But he has just been so unlucky in recent races. Have to think of his run of bad luck. Most of his... The only bit of form which really was his fault was Imola. But you have to think. He had that tyre failure in Mugello. He got taken out on the first lap in Sochi. He had to miss the Nürburgring due to testing positive for COVID. Or in the end, due to getting COVID. Of course, I think Portugal was still kind of his fault as well, because that was his incident. But then Turkey, he was looking good for a podium, and then he suffered that front wing damage. And now here, he gets taken out on the first lap of, or not really the first lap, but the first lap of a start. And especially he shouldn't really have been in that position because he had passed the issue, and his issue in qualifying wasn't his fault. So Lance has been very unlucky recently. But there was a lot... On the restart, there was a lot of battling. You had Charles Leclerc, who'd had a good start, making his way up the field, but dropping down the order. It was a two-start race. Lewis Hamilton pitting in and maintaining the lead, whilst he had the likes of the McLarens and the Renaults battling it out. There was actually a bit of inter-team rivalry at Renault in the end. Was, as you can see, Valtteri Bottas fighting his way back through the fit. Because one thing that I haven't mentioned yet, Valtteri Bottas, he got a good start on the second restart, but he actually got a puncture, which caused him to drop down the order. It's not been a good past couple of races for Valtteri, it can be said. But then, as I said, there was some inter-team battling at Renault between the likes of Ricciardo and Ocon. And eventually, Ricciardo got ahead. So, at this point, it was Hamilton in the lead. Verstappen had tried to get an undercut on Hamilton and closed the gap. But he had a bit of a poor second stop, which meant that he had no chance, but Lewis had the measure on him anyway. Sergio Perez was running in third and was driving a really good race. But a few laps short from the checkered flag, his engine let go. And it was heartbreak for him. He had driven so well and looked on course for a second straight podium. But his engine let him down. And he had to park up, and that resulted in the race being finished under the safety car. Lewis Hamilton took the victory ahead of Max Verstappen. Alex Albon was the beneficiary of Sergio Perez's misfortune. He finished in third. Have a great result from McLaren. Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz finishing in fourth and fifth. Pierre Gasly finishes in sixth ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas, Esteban Ocon, and Charles Leclerc takes the final point. Valtteri Bottas having another bad day. Then you had Danny Kvyat finishing in 11th ahead of George Russell, who did show signs of getting the points. Good drive from Russell. Another poor day for Sebastian Vettel. He wants to see the back of this season, I'm pretty sure. Then you had Nicholas Latifi in 14th, Kimi Raikkonen in 15th, Antonio Giovinazzi in 16th, and Kevin Magnussen rounding out the finishers, with Perez, Stroll and Grosjean all not finishing the race. So, in reverse constructors order, it is now time to have a team-by-team review of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Still waiting for that maiden point, but George Russell did drive a good race today to finish in 12th place. Nicholas Latifi finishing in 14th as well, but still that first point of the season eludes, and they might have a chance next week in the craziness that we're expecting at the Sakhir Grand Prix. Not really a good day for them, of course. They had that massive scare with Romain Grosjean having that big crash, but thankfully emerging okay. Good to see Gunther Steiner thanking the medical teams. Absolute heroic from Alan van der Merwe and Dr. Ian Roberts. Absolute heroic efforts from them. They literally risked their lives, walked into an inferno of flames to see if they could help Roman out, and they rightfully deserve some kind of award for the way that they handled today. Kevin Magnussen finished last out of the finishers in 17th, but it's a bad day results-wise, but I don't think they're going to really care. I think the only thing they're going to care about is Romain Grosjean being okay. Now, we don't know what's going to happen if Romain Grosjean is going to be back next weekend. If he does have broken ribs, then that will probably be him out for both the Sakhir race and Abu Dhabi. But I would not. I mean, honestly, it seems that big crashes have an effect on older drivers a lot more, especially ones with families such as him. That maybe he's going to call it a day now. They were kind of anonymous throughout the race, finishing in 15th and 16th place. It was not really much to really be said about them, to be honest. But, so kind of a very average race. No points for them. Next up, we have AlphaTauri. Another good strategy from Pierre Gasly, getting some solid points for AlphaTauri. Ferrari seemed to be out of reach, but a good result for Pierre Gasly. Danny Kvyat being involved in 2 accidents. One of them was his fault, which he got a penalty for and finished, which might have cost him a point because he finished in 11th. after a reasonable run in recent races, it can be said this was kind of back to reality. Neither car having any kind of pace. Charles Leclerc finishing in 10th and Sebastian Vettel finishing in 13th place. A bad day for Ferrari. A double points finish for them with Racing Points misfortune. They do close the gap to them, and I think the gap between them and... They are still in this fight for third in the Constructors. Well, it can be said a very bad day for them and very disappointing. Lance Stroll getting taken out and then Sergio Perez getting robbed, cruelly robbed of that podium due to his engine letting go. On the other hand, a good day for McLaren, retaking third in the Constructors. And they might have a chance of getting third place now, considering with 2 races to go. A nice double points finish, a 4th and a 5th. Really good points haul for them. The double podium for the first time since 2017. I think Red Bull will be quite happy with that. Max Verstappen did get a lot out of his car. And he really drove very well today to finish in a solid second place and actually kind of keep on terms with Lewis in some ways, whilst Alex Albon finishing in third, second podium in Formula 1, which is going to do good for his chance. He does seem to do well to bounce back from Friday crashes. We saw this in China last year. And then finally we have Mercedes. Another victory, but another bad day for Valtteri Bottas. But of course they have the Constructors clinched. And they're actually said that they're spending the next few races just focusing on 2021. Considering they've now got both titles wrapped up. The final bit of track action thing that I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to be talking about this more extensively in the Road to F1 review tomorrow. We had the Formula 2 race this morning, which saw Robert Schwartzman take a dominant victory, first time since Spa, winning the F2 race and keeping himself in title contention going into the last race ahead of Nikita Mazepin, who's also still in title contention. Schwartzman led from start to finish, but Louis Delattrez was on a different strategy, pitting during the sprint race, finishing in third ahead of Marcus Armstrong, Guan Yu Zhou, Christian Lundgaard. Mick Schumacher finished in 7th, which was a disappointing race. He could have capitalised more because Callum Ilott had a bad day, locking up going into turn 10 and hitting Jehan Daruvala out of the race. Get that, and the subsequent pit stop and drive through put him well out of the points. But Mick did not take advantage as he could have. Felipe Drugovich finished in 8th ahead of Nissany, and Markelov rounded out the points. 5 drivers are still in title contention going into the season finale. Schumacher, Ilott, Mazepin, Schwartzman and Tsunoda. So that is it from today's race. Obviously tomorrow we have the Road to F1 review. But the big stories are Lewis Hamilton winning the race, Romain Grosjean escaping from that horrific crash. Before I head off, make sure you check out the RaceWeek site at raceweekblog.com and make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel for more RaceWeek content. I'll be trying to get the Twitter account back up as well. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow for the Road to F1 review. Goodbye.